Rachel Holt for Netson.com here with DJ Foster of Fox Sports. DJ, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me up.
Of course. Well, it's Fantasy Football Week 14. So if you're listening to this podcast, you probably are in the playoffs. You deserve a congratulations. So you made it this far, and we want to try to help you make it farther in the form of a Fantasy Football Championship. So, DJ, as we head into Week 14, what's the biggest advice you would give to someone in this position where they're in the playoffs and they're looking for that trophy?
You got to play matchups now. I think it's hard to ignore 13 weeks of production, but now you really got to play matchups. I think if you're going up against Denver's pass defense or Minnesota's pass defense, you're in a one-and-done situation. You got to really look at it and think, okay, I need to sit even some of my guys who have been some of my best players because the matchup is terrible. So I think there's certain defenses you have to avoid. Like if you're an Allen Robinson owner and you somehow made it this far, congratulations. But if you have him and you're in the postseason, he's going up against Minnesota's pass defense, like you need to sit him this week. So I just think you got to pay really close attention and hone in on the individual matchups this week.
You're right. We need to think in the short term, and you're not necessarily picking guys that you would want on your team all season. That leads me to my next question about the quarterbacks. RG3 has been cleared for contact. We could see his return for the Cleveland Browns on Sunday. If you have a QB situation that is not ideal heading into the playoffs, is RG3 worth a glance?
A quick glance. He is going up against Cincinnati, who, they're vulnerable. They don't have a great pass defense. Quarterbacks can run on them a little bit. I don't think I want to go down that road this week if I can help it. I would rather stream some other guys, maybe, the other quarterback in that game, Andy Dalton, coming off a big game against the Eagles and gets Cleveland's pass defense, which is the worst in the league. I would rather look in that direction.
Gronk has been creating a lot of questions for people, especially here in New England.
Mm-hmm.
And we're looking for tight ends to fill that void. We've been waiting for Ladarius Green of the Pittsburgh Steelers to break out. He's been recovering from an injury, and he did that in Week 13 with 6 catches for over 100 yards and 1 touchdown. He was targeted 11 times in that game. Heading into Week 14, is he the top pick to replace a guy like Gronk with?
I would think so. Just on the waiver wire, he's probably one of the top guys that'll be available for you. I would caution that he's still not playing a full snap load. I think he was right around 50% of the snaps in his big game. He will be utilized around the red zone, and you're hoping for a touchdown when you stream any tight end. So he's a good bet, but I would caution that last week maybe won't be indicative of what's to come. I think that's kind of the ceiling for Green. Some other guys I would look at, a guy with a high floor for me, C.J. Stodorowicz in Houston. Over the last 8 weeks, he's averaged over 7 targets per game. So he's a guy who gets targeted quite a bit. They're playing the Colts, a defense that'll let up a lot of points. So I would look in that direction as well if Green isn't available or if, you're thinking last week was sort of a fluke.
Well, let's touch on that injury to Rob Gronkowski a little more. The season-ending injury is devastating to many fantasy owners, but on the bright side in the fantasy football world, that means there will be more chances for the Patriots receivers. 2 names come to mind, Malcolm Mitchell and Chris Hogan. Both of these guys are widely available in all leagues. Malcolm Mitchell had 3 touchdowns in the last 3 games, and Chris Hogan has been utilized in a big role in different games this season. Out of these 2 guys, would you consider picking one up, and do you think he's a safe bet heading into the playoffs?
Yeah, I think Malcolm Mitchell is the top waiver wire pickup this week. He's been great the last 2 weeks. His snap load, he's playing about over 85% of the snaps the last 2 games. So he's an every down receiver basically now. In that passing offense, again, no Gronk. Kenny Amendola just went down. So now you got a guy who is guaranteed locked into a high snap rate and an offense that is going to have to throw the ball against a Baltimore defense that is really good against the run. I'm in on Malcolm Mitchell this week. In my opinion, he's a wide receiver 2 candidate. He'll be a top 25 wide receiver this week in my mind.
We mentioned Malcolm Mitchell. We mentioned Ladarius Green. At this point, it's hard to find guys on that waiver wire, but are there any running backs or wide receivers that we may still be able to pick up heading into Week 14?
There's a couple of interesting guys coming back from injury. Charles Sims in Tampa Bay, the pass-catching specialist. He's been gone for most of the season, but he's practicing again. He's been activated from the IR. He's been practicing for a little bit now. Apparently he looks good. He's supposed to be thrust into action right away. And maybe even more importantly, the Bucks play the Saints 2 times here in the fantasy playoffs. You get them this week, week 14, and then you get them again in week 16 if you're a league that goes all the way to week 16. So Sims against the Saints in a passing down role, maybe the Bucks will have to, this will be a shootout. Maybe they're playing from behind a little bit. I would take a long look at Charles Sims in Tampa Bay.
You mentioned at the top of this podcast that we have to think in the short term here. We really have to focus on the matchups. Are you predicting any fantasy duds, guys that we rely on each week to put up the big points, names like Odell Beckham Jr., Des Bryant, those kinds of guys that don't have a great matchup in week 14?
Yeah, a guy that has really carried a lot of teams to the postseason. I feel like a starting quarterback for a lot of postseason teams is Marcus Mariota. He's been great the last 6 weeks or so. But again, they get Denver's pass defense, and it seems really unlikely that Mariota will throw for over 300 yards against a Denver pass defense. That's the best in the league. These cornerbacks just simply do not allow things to come their way. So I think Tennessee will take a very conservative approach. They'll run the ball a lot. That's where Denver's more vulnerable. So I could see Marcus Mariota finishing outside of the QB1, probably only a top 15, maybe even top 20 choice this week. You're probably going to want to stream that position if you're a Mariota owner.
DJ, you do a lot with daily fantasy. Are there some names that we can get at a good value this week?
Ooh, that's a good question. I haven't taken too long of a look at the daily fantasy schedule so far, but really I think you just want to identify the bad defenses out there, right? San Francisco has been gashed by the run all year long. I know Matt Forte hasn't been great lately, but that's going to drive his price down. I would take a look at Forte against the Niners. Again, Andy Dalton, there's some value in Cincinnati's pass offense going against Cleveland. Cleveland just lets up huge points to everyone. Dalton's in play as a low-priced quarterback. Tyler Boyd, Brandon LaFell, you can get some of these receivers on the cheap who, have a decent chance at a touchdown against a bad defense. So first thing I would do when I'm a DFS player and I'm looking to build my lineup, let's look at the defenses that have allowed a ton of rushing yards, a ton of passing yards, and let's pick on them.
Are there any final words of wisdom or names that you wanted to mention before we end this and we head into week 14 with all of your good advice?
Yeah, good luck, guys. You've made it this far. Now it's up to the fantasy gods. Hang in there, play the matchups, put out your best lineup. If it doesn't go your way, look, that's these 1 week games head to head. It doesn't seem fair after 13 weeks of points. Just do your best. You made it this far. 10 other teams, 8 other teams, whatever it is in your league, haven't made it. So take some solace in the fact that you're still here. You're still alive.
A little bit of skill, but a lot of luck involved. DJ, thanks so much. And last question, where can we find more from you throughout the week?
You can find me on Twitter at Fox Sports Foster. I'll post all of my articles there.
Good luck in week 14, everyone. Thanks, DJ.